You let me know when you want to get started, Travis, and I'll
I
get us.
think let's go ahead and go ahead and get started.
All right, excellent. Welcome all to this 2026 Community Investor Accelerator info session. It's my pleasure to be working with Travis. I'm Len Bartel. I'm working with the Community Investment Project. I come from a background both in health conversion space and for nearly 7 years working with a national infrastructure organization that works specifically with community foundations, CF Leads. And so know the absolute power of being in cohort with other people to share ideas and challenges. And so having you here in this space to learn more about this accelerator project is exciting. And so a little bit about the Community Investment Project, if you're not aware, is really an opportunity for us to try to build momentum and advance the field's kind of uptake of community impact investing by mission-driven anchor institutions like community foundations, health conversion that I mentioned, other private foundations that are focused and rooted in place to really explore how we can leverage the variety of assets that we have as institutions to unlock capital for our communities. We are living through some difficult times in terms of resources and scarcity, and so how do we, in our place, just as in politics, all change is local, right? So how do we think about how we can use our balance sheets to unlock capital that our communities so desperately need for things like workforce housing and food access, all sorts of things, economic mobility. So what we do and what Travis has already done multiple times in cohorts is really working with board and staff to educate them, to facilitate networks and peer learning, to share best practices, to really kind of build out this field of impact investing. And then helping them along their way as they launch and figure out where assets might come from within their institutions. So this is an exciting conversation. We'll be joined by Travis, who you see on your screen, as well as Kacie Tollefson from the Montana Community Foundation, and I believe Alejo Cabral from the Kansas Health Foundation. They'll be sharing their stories. And then I'm assuming we'll open it up for Q&A. Travis, I don't know if the speakers will welcome questions along the way, but I'll be keeping a track of the chat and can catalog some questions. And then when we do have questions, if you wouldn't mind coming off video and mute to ask your question specifically, I will offer that to you. If not, I will just read the questions out of the chat. But I'm going to pass it over to Travis. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Len. And there are a few people who have done more field building work with place focused foundations than Len, and it's a privilege to collaborate and work with you. Um, Thank you all for being here. I'll start briefly at the beginning, providing a bit of an overview of this Community Investor Accelerator, this process that Len and others and I are building to help foundations kind of become impact investors in less than a year. And after my presentation, we'll get to hear from both Alejo and from Kacie about why their foundations got started in this work. So as I'm making this presentation about the accelerator, if you have questions about it, please speak up. And also, at the end of today's call, we'll have the opportunity to take as many questions as you have about this process. So, to what Len was sharing and kind of why we started getting to work building this accelerator experience is that we all know that communities need assets to succeed, right? That was the vision of health conversion foundations and community foundations, other place-focused philanthropy. And we know that the assets that they need are diverse, right? Good infrastructure, well-trained workers, growing local businesses. But critically, many of us are recognizing that communities need wealth that can be invested for their future in their place, whether that's to build homes or finance childcare businesses or support entrepreneurs in the work that they're doing. And as institutional asset holders, there's an opportunity for you all to be the sources of that wealth. And interestingly, across the field, we're seeing more and more foundations of all types making the decision to become that kind of capital provider in their place. Looking at community foundations, for instance, we've already identified over 100 community foundations that have adopted place-based impact investing programs, and I'll get to what that means in a moment. But increasingly, they're setting aside portions of their investment portfolio, 3%, 5%, 10%, to invest in their community alongside their mission. So today we'll be throwing around a lot of language about impact investing, and I just want to clarify for everybody who's participating today what we mean by community investing or impact investing. And part of the reason I start here always is that impact investing is a huge field, and this is talked about in many different ways. And the largest segment of impact investing in the world right now is ESG investing or screened investing. And this means screening out or selling investments that are not aligned with your foundation's mission. So if you're a health foundation, you may know that you screen out tobacco products from your portfolio, or you may screen out tobacco products from your portfolio. Some foundations have a focus on carbon reduction, or some foundations don't want to own kind of weapons manufacturers in their portfolio. This is again, largest segment of impact investing, but it's not what we're talking about today.
Okay.
We also see foundations exploring activist investing. This may mean buying a stock so that you can show up at a shareholder meeting and advocate for a particular interest as part of a shareholder of that company. Again, more foundations are doing this, but it's not what we're talking about today. You'll also see increasing investment products that are focused on different kind of topical areas that you might care about. So health, there might be a health fund, or there might be a clean energy fund, or there might be a entrepreneurship fund broadly across many communities. Again, more foundations are interested in this, but it's not what we're talking about today. Today, we're talking about community investing, or sometimes it's called local impact investing or place-based impact investing. And this means using investments in local companies or organizations or local funds to generate some sort of measurable community benefit, right? And foundations are typically doing this with in their service area. So we're going to hear from the Montana Community Foundation later. And in Montana, they're investing in Montana. We're going to hear from the Kansas Health Foundation in a bit. And again, at the Kansas Health Foundation, they're investing in Kansas in mission-aligned ways for the foundation. So a bit about why foundations are doing this. And first, I think let's get real. I think sometimes this is a single board member or a donor or a stakeholder in the institution that says, "Hey, this is a good idea. I'd like to do this." And then the institution starts a conversation about what it would mean for us to do this. And the motivation might be that these stakeholders saw this happening somewhere else and they want your foundation to adopt it. Or if it's a community foundation and related to a donor, it may be that a donor wants this pathway to philanthropy available to them. The second reason foundations get into this work is that some challenges that your community is experiencing just require tools other than grants, right? So in the case of housing, for instance, if you're a foundation and your typical grant size is $10,000 or $15,000, that's not going to do a lot to address the housing challenge in your community. But a couple $100,000 investment from your investment portfolio, which, by the way, is already likely invested in housing in other communities, might make a difference in your place. The third reason foundations are starting to do this work is that, and you won't be surprised, but that community need is surpassing your grant budgets, right? More and more foundations at the end of their grant cycles have 2 or 3 or 4 times the amount of grant requests as they have capital to provide. And by turning to the other 95% of their assets, they have an opportunity to double down on the impact that they care about most in their place. And then finally, we see foundations doing this because strategic investments by your entities, by foundations, can really help leverage other dollars into your community. The example that I frequently give is that the Arizona Community Foundation um, made a set of strategic investments in rural Arizona to leverage over $40 million of USDA rural development dollars into their communities. So by you entering into this market, providing capital to those local partners that are essential to your community, you're able to attract federal, state, or private sector resources to support the work you care about. So I'll just share a couple of details about the 2026 Community Investor Accelerator. Um, Again, the idea behind the development of the accelerator is that we saw foundations spending 4 or 5 or sometimes 10 years having a conversation about doing this kind of work. And foundations didn't have a good gauge on what were the consequences of the different decisions that they were making in the structure of their impact investing program. Foundations were not including their board or their investment committee in those discussions. They weren't adopting the policies that they needed to do impact investing. And so what we were trying to figure out was once a foundation says, yeah, we'd like to do this work, is there a way that a foundation could kind of accelerate through this process and in less than a year be ready to deploy capital into their community? And that was the nexus of the accelerator. The design of the program is that 4 to 6 foundations go through this together, and we find that that's helpful because I think board members and staff ask a lot of questions about, can foundations do this? What does it look like in different places? And doing it in a peer context just makes a lot of sense. And as a part of that process, you engage the board and the staff in kind of a consensus building exercise of designing an investment policy that's right for your foundation. Um, the structure of the accelerator is that we have monthly half-day workshops. So these are 4-hour workshops that include presenters from other foundations across the country that have done this before, their board members, their staff, or potential investment partners that are making the kinds of community investments that you all care about. Um, so those 6 workshops are essential for kind of building a base knowledge and getting to know other peers in the field that are doing this work. In addition to that, we have tailored coaching sessions for all of the foundations, and these are the opportunities to write your specific investment policy, have the discussions about what your impact lens looks like or your investment scorecard looks like, and then ideally by the end of the program, have all of the documentation that you require to launch your program starting in 2027. Just a couple more thoughts about the accelerator process and what it entails. Um, I think you talk to anybody in impact investing, and they'll tell you that impact investing at its heart is a whole foundation undertaking. right? This requires leadership from both your board and your staff. And we do that in the accelerator by creating a core team with you, which has 5 to 9 members from your community. And that could be a combination of board staff, and investment committee. And if you at your foundation like to have kind of outside stakeholders be a part of your process, absolutely include them in your core team. Then staff have to usually are expected to commit additional time to this policy in terms of completing assignments, reviewing policy with your foundation attorney, and consulting with your investment advisor about the structure of your program. And the program cost for your 2 coaches in this process is $32,000. Although I'll say if you're here from Kansas, there's a scholarship for you, and we're also willing to join conversations with donors about what this might look like for your foundation to help you raise that capital. And the idea is that by the end of the accelerator, you've accomplished 6 things, right? First, you've identified a source of funds in your foundation that can be used for impact investing for the foreseeable future. That you stand up a board level committee, typically, impact investment committee, to govern this work at your foundation. That you've drafted and ratified an investment policy and a set of procedures so that you can make investments. That you've created a pipeline process. And our hope is that by the end of this, you've identified your first potential investment as a foundation and are starting to think about and kind of assess that opportunity. We think that you'll have to have begun that conversation about what it means to have this impact investment culture as an institution. And this usually requires a new and different role for your foundation and community economic development in your place. Um, and then by the end of it, you'll have joined a growing field of peers. We've had about 20 foundations who've gone through this program previously. You'll join those peers in kind of a community that can help answer your questions, provide templates, help you be a better community investor. And I went a little long, I'm sorry. But are there any burning questions? Otherwise, I'll hand it over to Kacie. We're having you go first, right?
There was
Okay.
a quick one just about sharing the slides after the webinar.
Yes,
And the recording
absolutely.
of
We'll share the slides, and this will also be posted on YouTube. And we will share this link if there are other board members that you'd like to share this with, or committee members. All right. Well, and I will stay around after the presentation for Q&A, and but also am available by email to have conversations with anybody who's interested in the program. But with that, I'm excited to turn it over to Kacie at the Montana Community Foundation. Kacie is kind of a fantastic thinker and leader within her foundation that recently built and is now starting to deploy impact investments in Montana. And I'm excited to get an update on the work she's doing. So, Kacie.
Thank you, Travis. Do I have the ability to share? Okay, let me get this going here. Okay, give me 1 second. I get to. Okay, can everybody see my screen okay?
Yes.
All right. So thank you, Travis, for the introduction. And I think that you will learn that MCF is a prime example of his steps of the outcomes. I was laughing as I saw that because I was like, wow, we've come a long way, Travis, from those days. As Travis said, my name is Kacie Tollefson. I am the Executive Vice President of Finance and Administration at the Montana Community Foundation. I was born and raised in a small town in northeastern Montana, around 1,600 people. It's 40 miles from the Canadian border, 250 from the North Dakota border, just to give you a reference. I have 16 years in public accounting, where I specialized in nonprofit and governmental auditing and tax. But then I decided in 2016 to transition out of what I called the dark side and come over to the private side. And I have loved it. For any of you that are accountants out there in public accounting, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. So about MCF, we are a statewide community foundation. So I know that most of you guys are a smaller geographic region, but we are statewide. We are 23 staff, and we have offices in Helena, Big Fork, Havre, Bozeman, and Billings. When I started in 2016, we were only at 64 million in total assets. We are now over 215 million in total assets. So we have had significant growth in a relatively small period of time. And one of the reasons that impact investing became on our radar that you'll learn is that we are highly endowed. We do not have a lot of our own discretionary granting funds. So as Travis mentioned, granting wasn't really an option for us. So impact investing was always something that we've looked at. We do have we have a local community foundation program, which is 40 affiliate and affiliate partners. About half are under our 501c3, half we hold all of their endowments. We also have a women's foundation as one of our major programs. We have a big grants and scholarships program, and we have several annual distributions. We're at about 800. Whoops, I didn't mean to go to that slide. Let me go back. About 800 endowments where we grant out annual distributions. And new in 2024 is our impact investing. So the timeline, this was kind of funny because I feel like I even had to get some clarification from Travis on this, but my boss, my current president and CEO, she came in 2014 and I came in 2016, but it was in around that time frame where we had a board member that was really passionate on another board that did impact investing, and she was really wanting MCF to get involved. And we did have a lot of interest, but we just did not have staff capacity. At that time, we only had about 8 employees, only 2 in accounting staff. And the board just wasn't ready at that time. Like I mentioned, we were at 64 million and they had a goal to hit 100 million. So they kind of weren't willing. They wanted to get the investment pool up first before they went into impact investing. And so from 2016 to 2020, we had pretty significant growth. I think by the end of 2020, we had even hit about 125 or 150 in total assets. So we did grow quite a bit, and our staff hit about 15 to 16 by that time. With the pandemic in the state of Montana, we had a lot of organizations that reached out to us, again, wanting kind of more in granting funds, but we didn't have that available. And so impact investing was always kind of still at the forefront. And so it was around 21, 22 that I think my boss ran into Travis. I think that's around the timeline that she ran into Travis through another organization and really got the wheels going. And it was end of 22 and 23 that we took the accelerator classes with 4 or 5 of our board members, and then 3 of us on staff. To really get an understanding of what the program was going to look like. And then I'm happy to say that in January of 2024, so then in 23, we, like Travis mentioned on his bullet points, we did all the work. We took the accelerator classes, and through that, we built out our policies. We created an ad hoc committee. We got all the structure. We got a timeline going for us so that we could be successful. We even, thought about who we wanted to invite as a possible person to partner with first. And so that's where in January of 2024, we launched our program. For our foundation, we decided because safe and successful was kind of our focus, we still had some board members that were a little nervous about this program. And so we did it a unique way that worked for us. We extended 4 private invitations to CDFIs that we had a strong reputation and a relationship already with MCF. And what was unique about this is we also aligned with them that since they were going to be invited to apply, that we asked that they give us feedback so that we could learn from them as well. These organizations are very established, and so they have their own set of processes that they shared with us too in some of this applications and everything. And that was pretty invaluable for us. And so from those 4, 2 were able to apply. They actually had some projects and the timeline worked out well for them to be able to do this. And so in November of 2024, both organizations were awarded their loans. And so we were very, very excited for that. Our first awardees, one was the Native American Opportunity Development Corporation, NACDC. It is a CDFI located in Browning, Montana on the Blackfeet Indian Reservation, and it is housing. Housing is huge in Montana right now. When I get to my next screen, it'll explain a lot of why. And the way that we worked with them was it was $1 million loan, 10 years, 1% interest. They elected to do monthly payments, and all amounts unpaid are due and payable January 15th of 2035. The funds were deployed December 31st of 2024. So we are 6 months in with them, or 9 months in with them now. And we got all of their financial information for their financial review because they have a 1231 audit. And then we are working for their first, what we call programmatic, meaning what are their funds being used for, to show their impact in Montana, will be in January. So we're working on that with them then right now. Our second one was Montana Homeowners Network, which is also NeighborWorks Montana to us. And it is a nonprofit based in Great Falls, Montana, that creates housing opportunities across the state. This one was structured a little different. It was $1 million, 7 years, 2% interest, and then quarterly interest only payments, and then a balloon payment of all amounts unpaid on June 30th of 2032. And we just deployed that loan on July 1 of 2025 because that worked with the project. That was the timing that they needed with their project. And so we literally just started that one. Their first payment will be at the end of this month. So we will get their audit reports and everything as they are available, but no programmatic at this time. So the why. First of all, MCF resources, we have always been approached. Opportunity has never been our problem. But in the very beginning, we just didn't have the capacity. We didn't have the capital at that time, and kind of a little bit of board support just because we were focusing on getting our investment pool at the time built up enough to make it a little bit more not as scary, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And so we do have strong relationships with nonprofits. As a matter of fact, we have, I think most nonprofits in the state we hold endowments for here. So our relationships with them are far and wide, as well as through our LCF program, our affiliates and our affiliate partners, we have a strong connection in a lot of the communities. With 40, there's 56 counties in Montana, so with 40, we cover a broad base of our state. And we also work a lot in partnership with state, county, and other governmental agencies. So a lot of those relationships overlap as well. So our connections help us. And like I said, our biggest point in being able to start this was just where we were at, financially stable. We had more in capacity with our investment pool. And so the way that our impact investment strategy is set up is that we are allowed to have 5% of our endowed assets on a 3-year rolling average that we can utilize for impact investing. And so currently that's a little higher than 8 million. It might actually be closer to 9 million right now. And currently we've deployed 2 million. And we also, part of the other thing that really helped was that our impact committee has extensive knowledge in impact investing. We were able to utilize our connections and get a very strong impact investing committee. And so that calmed a lot of some of the nervousness with the board. As far as needs, why do we do this? Montana is the 4th largest state, but we only have about 1 million residents. We have a lot of non-residents in communities, but not a lot of residents. And also right now in our state, we have a lot of generational transitions that are happening. The affordability of agriculture, I'm sure, as some of you guys deal with in rural areas, is getting harder to do and to pass along. And so with a lot of non-residents, coming in, and a lot of our property taxes have skyrocketed. 2020 and a show called Yellowstone launched us, I guess. We have seen a big swing in areas. Bozeman is now called Los Angeles. But just this year in 2025, we are first in the nation for unaffordable housing. And we have very limited housing options in most communities because of it. Which then the trickle down is my last bullet point. The biggest ones being childcare, medical resources, and educational resources, and water and related infrastructure. We've really felt the pressure to most communities. In fact, the growth has been large, but they just can't keep up. And so we aren't even able to retain teachers in most communities because there's not even housing or childcare that they can afford. So those are the tip of the icebergs with needs. There's a lot that trickle down, but housing by far is our most, which is why our first 2 awards went to housing organizations that help with those needs. And we currently have 4 that are applying, and most of them are also related to housing. It's just the big demand right now. And so
Kacie, 60-second warning.
Oh, okay. So advice, the easiest thing I will say is take the accelerator classes. It is, when you get into this, the one thing that probably the most impactful session that we had was you get to hear success stories, but failure stories. And that was very eye-opening. When you open up your program, you can always change, but having a clear plan to start is the biggest message that I can and advice that I can give you, because you are going to have every single investor with every single different need. And if you do not have a clear plan of what your program is there for, it will overwhelm you very fast. And I am happy to go through these, but basically that's my biggest piece of advice, is to make sure that you have a strong foundation and how you want this program to work, because you can always change. but the people that are looking for the funding are all going to be very different, and you want to make sure that your mission's clear so that you don't get sidetracked. Because saying no is hard. But I won't read all these, but just for time's sake, that's my biggest piece. We loved the accelerator class. Loved it. Questions? I'll stop sharing so I can see people.
I have a question. My name's Matt Allen. I'm in the Western Kansas Community Foundation room. Thank you for your presentation so far, Kacie. When you all embarked on this, and my assumption is that your foundation does have some donor-advised funds for your program issues. How did you convince those that thought using the assets from donor-advised funds might be betraying the will of the original gift being made?
So right now, most of our endowments, the amount that we have picked, the 5%, is even smaller than some of what the investment managers within our endowment pool. And so it's such a small portion of our total investment portfolio right now that even if there was a small loss, it's not going to fluctuate. Like the example that I used is because our investment pool when we were first starting this was around 180 million. And I think in 22, we took a $33 million hit just because the market tanked, unfortunately, right before our audit. And investment, I mean, the market swung from a $33 million loss to about a $15 million gain. And it's like when you look at, less than $1 million on your entire investment portfolio, and right now it's a 2% solid. So that was sort of the way that we looked at it.
A follow-up question, and congratulations on taking on the having the courage to take on the biggest issues facing your community. Has anybody missed a payment since November of 24 on those two loans?
Nope. The NeighborWorks Montana will have their first payment at the end of this quarter, but
Okay.
yeah, NACDC, they got their money and they have not missed any payments. And we were very strategic in picking. That's why we elected to do a small private invitation first, was because we wanted to make sure that, not to say that it was going to be 100% cheating, but we knew that none of these organizations have defaulted on a payment yet. And we were fortunate that in the state of Montana, everybody kind of knows everybody. But so we kind of, knew that the risk was going to be low, and we wanted to kind of start off on the right foot.
So Kacie, I want to hand it over to Alejo so we stay on time, but I did want to throw one more question at you, which is what you said 5% of assets, which is to Terry's point. And Mark's asking this question, but Mark is a place-based impact investor. But how do you guys determine the interest rate that you had two different interest rates? Why did you end up with those two different interest rates on the investments you made?
Yeah, so in our policy, we said that we would allow interest rates anywhere from like 1, I think with 5 at being the highest. And so in the application is where we said, what are you applying for and what interest rate would you like to be at? So the organizations themselves dictated what interest rate that they were comfortable at. And so that's, in our situation, that is how it worked, is that they applied and then they stated what rate they were comfortable with.
Great, thank you. Well, and I'll transition to Alejo, which brings a different perspective to this work, doing it from a health foundation, but also a statewide foundation in Kansas. So Alejo, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Travis. Give me 1 second. Share my screen. And um, though I'm Alejo Cabral, I am the Director of Philanthropic Partnerships at the Kansas Health Foundation. A little bit about me. I am new to philanthropy world, so I joined the Kansas Health Foundation at the end of February, so been here for about 6 months. But prior to that, I think I've come to the realization that all of the jobs that I did leading up to the Health Foundation and this work at leading our impact investment efforts, I mean, kind of fit together perfectly. So the first like 5.5, 6 years of my, you could say, professional career, I spent it in consumer banking, specifically like in consumer loans, so mortgages, lines of credit, small business loans, that type of thing. And then I worked at the Wichita Regional Chamber of Commerce after that for another 5 years or so, mainly doing talent work and place-based, like um, programming and things like that. And then following that, I spent about 3.5 years working with a local nonprofit here in Wichita, helping entrepreneurs and small businesses prepare for financing. So, helped launch a 12-week entrepreneurship program where by the time I left, I think we had served 108 entrepreneurs in Wichita and across Kansas, a total of like 160 or so. Um, Prepare, their business for financing of the 12 weeks. 8 of the 12 weeks had a focus on the dollars, right? So teaching them about how to develop, a 12-month projection and then, 5-year projection, and then teaching them to reconcile their books so that they have projections and actuals, and teaching them about P&L statements and, identifying what their break even is for their products and all of those things, right? Um, and all of those jobs and all of those opportunities that I had, I never figured out how they fit together. And then Travis wrote this beautiful job description, and I saw it, and I was like, wow, this is it. This is everything I've done, everything I've been working towards the last, however long. It's this, and so I had the privilege to join the Kansas Health Foundation, and the Health Foundation. I'll get into the history here in a moment, but. We are a statewide organization. We have about 600 million in assets and deploy about 30 million or so in grants every year. Um, the foundation itself, I believe I was the 21st employee we hired, or the 20th, and we recently hired a 21st. But we've had a history of being involved in impact investment indirectly. Um, the work that we've done started back when the foundation we were birthed from the sale of a local hospital that was owned by the Methodist Church, and it was with that sale that they seeded what is now the Kansas Health Foundation, right? And so since 1985, this year we turned 40. So since 1985, we've existed in Kansas, and when I mentioned we've had a history of impact investing, um, we had this program that we called Grow. We had Grow and Grow Two, and we helped local community foundations across Kansas raise and endow dollars. And do we have it on here? Can't remember how much we raised, but um, these the Kansas Health Foundation, I think, has a really strong relationship with community foundations across the state. Specifically, a lot of our some colleagues of mine, Jeff Usher, if any of you are from Kansas, you probably know Jeff, have spent countless hours working with community foundations across Kansas to raise dollars, but also open up doors and make connections. And um, on top of that, we've worked with a number of partners, awarding grants to other partners to make loans and invest across Kansas. Kansas is really unique in that we don't have we have CDFIs that serve Kansas, but that aren't physically headquartered in Kansas. But we have amazing institutional partners like Network Kansas that aren't a CDFI but sort of act like one, who we've worked with and previously had awarded grants to them, and they would they would do loans for grocery stores and things like that across rural communities. Um, so j this idea of impact investment was something that was introduced to the Kansas Health Foundation a number of years ago, and we were, I think, inadvertently doing it. We just didn't call it impact investing. Um, but one of the reasons why we chose to and made this decision was, well, Travis twisted our arm in the accelerator. No, no, we had the privilege to work with Travis, and really we came to the realization, right, that our grants weren't enough. Um, so being a health like the Kansas Health Foundation and looking at the health of our state, we were looking at the American Health Rankings, and in the I think it's late 90s, early 2000s, Kansas was ranked eighth in America's health rankings as the eighth healthiest state. And I believe they look at like 65 different metrics, measuring points, data points. Well, from then till 2013 or 2023, excuse me, the Kansas Health Foundation went from being ranked eighth to being ranked 31st. And the reason why that's yes, it's a big drop, but also Kansas had the biggest drop in health rankings during that period of time, and under the Kansas Health Foundation's watch, right? And so there's this realization that we couldn't keep doing the same things, and so realizing that our grants weren't enough, right? Uh, and going through this program with Travis, um, this accelerator, the foundation made a decision to carve out 10% of the endowment, and instead of investing in foreign markets, right, decided, hey, what would it look like to take those investments and reinvest back into Kansas? And so we have about $60 million or so that we get to work with through the impact investment program. Now, we can't deploy it all in 1 year, but we do have a goal of deploying 10 million every year, no more than 15. Um, and we really try to be intentional about deploying it across all nine economic development districts across Kansas. So, in Kansas, our three big metros are Kansas City, Topeka, and Wichita, and it's easy for us to deploy dollars in those areas, just based off of population size and volume. But this focus on deploying across the nine economic development districts forces us to be intentional about building relationships across rural communities. And that's kind of how we got to the Kansas Health Foundation got to this point with Travis and working to support Kansas Health or foundation community foundations across Kansas. So the impact investment work when we launched it, and actually let me go back. When we launched it, we did a couple of experiments, but in the first 2 years of actually having the impact investment program off the ground, we didn't make any investments. And when I joined the staff, the team, we, and it isn't because of me, it's just because we have dedicated staff that this work is heavy, right? Previously, it was led by our CEO and our CFO, and those are two exceptional men, but they also have to do CEO and CFO things, right? And so, when the first three in the first 6 months that I've been here, we've deployed 3.6 million in investments, to three different investments, and we've received 29 million in capital applications for 2025, including that 3.6 million. So already, like the $15 million that we've said we won't invest more than that, is already exhausted. And here's the wild thing is that if you go on the Kansas Health Foundation website, we haven't even publicized it yet, right? Like we have not published our impact investment site, right? So anybody who wants to connect on impact investment, needs to have a conversation with me first. And it just shows, I think, the need across Kansas. What I'll share with those investments as well is, we're seeing investments in every industry, right? Housing, rural healthcare, um, not so much food, but small business support, um, childcare, and everything you can think of, tech companies and startups and all of that fun stuff. Um, and so the the types of investments when I started was go ahead, Travis.
Oh, just 2 minute warning,
2 minutes.
Alejo.
Okay, sorry. So the idea from our end though was what this idea of ecosystem building is we realize we can't do this work alone. And so one of the things that we want to do is help other community foundations that have shown an interest and have said that they want impact investments to be an impact investment program to be a part of the portfolio is we want to pay for them to be able to do that, right? And stand up their impact investment program so that the Kansas Health Foundation can come alongside them and help mitigate some of that risk, right? So we know that we don't know your communities better than you do, right? You all are experts. You are there every day on the ground. You know what the needs are, where the greatest needs exist. And so we're leaning on our community foundations to source their deals. And as those investments come up, if they wish to work alongside the Kansas Health Foundation, right? We want to be able to come alongside and match at the level that works for you. Um, the first three investments though that we made was two of the three were partners that we call our building power and equity partners. So these are nonprofits that we've committed to support them with grant dollars for 10 years. So we tapped into the group that we knew the most initially, and then from there it's really just been word of mouth. Um, and I apologize, I've talked a lot. Um, the and I think I've covered this already, but really knowing that we knew that our grants weren't enough, right? Um, the advice that I give anybody to the community foundations that are interested in participating in this and standing up an impact investment program, I didn't go through the accelerator program, but I thought 100% I would recommend to go through it. While you're going through it, though, I would strongly recommend that you identify a staff person that's going to be responsible for the execution of the program that isn't an executive. I'm not saying that your CEO and your CFO or your COO or whoever it might be doesn't need to be involved. They absolutely need to be involved and they need to champion the thing. Um, what I see every day, I mean, our executives they are doing the work that they've set out to do. This impact investment work, it takes more time than you imagine. And the other thing is really be cognizant and identify as you're going through this program, what is it that you're going to value more? If you're doing this right, then you need to figure out, are we valuing impact or are we valuing return? If the value is return, then just keep your money where it is in your endowment, right, in the market, and get your 7%, 8%, whatever it is. But understand that this is an opportunity for you to diversify your portfolio as well. Um, and know that you're not going to get 7, 8% return, but the impact that you're going to make in your state and in your community, um, it's it's invaluable, and there is no way to put it on a balance sheet. But you gotta know that you putting your dollars into your local community is going a lot further than keeping it in a market. Questions? I answered everything. Dang, Travis. Thanks, man.
Thank you, Alejo. Happy to field any questions. We've got a few minutes left. You can either raise your hand with the raising hand icon or just come off of mute and ask your question of Kacie, of Alejo, or Travis.
I will just echo what Alejo said about that was probably coming a little bit back to the question that I answered, like how do you convince people, return or impact? And so, yeah, for our donor advised fund holders, it's part of all of our money is pooled. And so this is just one small aspect of the portfolio. And so like, 2% or 4% return wherever you're at, but you also have impact. And so that was kind of the big hurdle. Same thing, big hurdle that we came over, but that's Montana has a strong need. Most organizations need that need or have that need.
And thank you for that, Kacie. Travis is also offering to stay over a little bit if people have time and questions that he can help answer. Yasmin from the Legacy Regional Community Foundation. You want to ask it yourself, or you want me to just read it? I'll just go ahead and read it. Is there a foundation that is too small to try to take on this work? Your impact investment portfolios that you're talking about are larger than their community foundation's total assets.
So I think in our experience, if so, there's a community foundation in Kansas that does this with less than $1 million in assets. They have a culture of being a community lender that not all foundations have. So absolutely small foundations can do this. I think if you're doing this in addition to grant making and you have staff and you have other things that you're focused on, it can be helpful to be, um, you know, around $10 million in assets as you're kind of building your program, but that's not a hard and fast rule.
This is Stacy with the Western Kansas Community Foundation, and kind of a follow-up, I think, to Matt's previous questions, probably more directed at Kacie than Alejo, but you know, as we're talking about like donor advised, designated funds, all of those various classifications that are in your endowment, and you're talking about carving off, say, 5% of that endowment pool. What did those conversations with the donors, the fund holders look like? Like, you know, to some degree, you're going to be taking money away from their grantable portion. It's going to become a non-cash asset for a while. So there's a non-grantable portion there in their fund. Did you come against any pushback from donors? Did you have any fund holders who said, did you ask them, do you opt out, or did you just tell them we are going to be using 5% of your fund, basically?
Yeah, so we are structured probably a little different from some that have we don't have individual endowments invested individually. And what I mean by that is, so like we have around 1,200 funds. And so when I get my investment statement, that the earnings, gains, losses, fees get allocated across all of them. This is just another aspect that is just separately allocated across all of them. It's not pulling their liquidity out of their grantable. It's just part of our investment strategy. So like the liquidity hasn't been impacted. It's just that our portfolio liquidity was shifted to account for illiquid portion of the portfolio. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Because I was going to say, because like we have illiquid portions of our investments, and then but all of our cash needs in the portfolio are being met through other investment strategies. So our 5% of this for impact investing, that's part of our illiquid portion of our portfolio, but we have all the liquidity for grantable to be met. Does that make sense? I can't see if anybody's nodding.
Yeah, no, we're good. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. So no, we did not have to reach out to individual fund holders. It's just part of our investment strategy.
So I'll just say now at the end of the hour that folks, I recognize you have other things in your life you got to go run and do, including our speakers if they need to. But I'm happy to stick around and answer any questions that folks have. And to the folks in Western Kansas, I think what Kacie was sharing was absolutely right. You know, and there are different kinds of investment sources of funds that foundations can choose. And part of the reason why more and more foundations are choosing an asset allocation strategy is it doesn't encumber a donor's ability to make grants or give, and it leverages the most assets. Now, there is a marginal diminished financial return that comes from that typically, but foundations can model that out and say, is that a diminished return that we're willing to have for this level of impact? And most community foundations say yes.
And I'm happy to stay on if people have more questions.
Yeah, I can stay on as well.
But thank you all for joining us. And I will say that if you are interested in the accelerator, please reach out to me. I'll put my email address in the chat. And we will be starting at the end of December with the first class in January.
And to the Western Kansas, my email is in my slides. And if you're interested in just kind of learning how we carve that out within our portfolio, I'm happy to talk about that if you'd like.
Thank you so much, Kacie.
And to anybody else. Obviously.
I just noticed Alejo put his in the chat as
Yes.
well. If you have any additional questions offline for him, and Kacie, the same. So feel free to grab those. Thank you all for your time. I guess we'll hang out for a few more minutes in case people want to ask some questions. Thanks for taking your time.
For those that are still on, it's a great thing to do.
Kacie, and she means impact investing.
Yes. Yes. It's a great thing. Yes. Impact investing.
And the cohort, Travis, and the cohort.
Yeah.
It's right for some. It's right for some.
Yeah.
All right. Seeing no other questions. Thanks.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Well,
you.
thanks, Travis. Nice to meet you, Alejo.
Kacie,
Thanks,
yes.
Kacie.
Travis,
Thanks, Alejo.
Len, thank you.
Thank you, Len.
And let me know if there's any questions I can help with. Nice to meet you, Len.
Yeah, pleasure to meet you.
Kacie, you're going to come present to the cohort.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks for hanging in there, Stephen.
All right.
Yeah.